shout out to Hip Hop Stories. But today we're going to react to the clientele piece that they did. And before we do get started, I want to, remind everybody to subscribe to Hip Hop Stories on YouTube and tell them Alonzo Williams and Dusty Vision sent you. But let's jump right into it, Lonzo. One of the first things they mentioned was clientele won a battle at your, here, let me actually go back. Boom, boom, boom. Yeah. Hold on. Sorry, my whole thing just went cuckoo. All right. So in the video, it said that you won a rap contest that was organized by you, just as the group was making a shift from mobile DJs to recording artists. Is that true? And what do you remember about that time?
Yeah, that was true. I used to do all type of contests, even after dark. I would do pop locking contests, rapping contests, and clientele came in one day and kicked ass. And he won the contest hands down. And I mentioned to him that I was put together a group, and he said he wanted to be down. He was still in high school, if I'm mistaken. And yeah, that was an introduction to the group. Yella had been there first. I think Dre had just, I don't know if Dre might have been visiting. I don't know if he even joined the crew yet. But clientele, because Dre was the last one to come in, if I'm mistaken. No, clientele was the last one to come in. Yeah, he saw Dre, knew Dre from school. And that's how he knew. That was kind of our prerequisite to us being cool.
Okay. All right. So in between the clientele talk, we're going to incorporate your point of view and what you remember about that time. But what can you tell us? What do you remember about that transition, Lonzo, from going from mobile DJs to recording artists?
Well, although I was making records already, but I wasn't making rap records. I was making bootlegs. So I was familiar with the recording process and the record manufacturing process, but I was not familiar with the actual recording process. So I'm sorry, I'll back up again. I'm gonna back up again. We had made a record. We had went to record a record before clientele, Dre, Yella, anybody that you know joined the crew. We made a record back in 1979, I believe it was, called the EAD Rap, but we never released it. That was the difference. We never released it. So, and again, at that time, I was familiar with recording, but I wasn't familiar with record manufacturing. So it wasn't until later on we started making the bootlegs, the Z-Rocks, cut-ups, and things of that nature. And that's how I got familiar with the recording part, the record manufacturing part. And I took those two, that knowledge from recording and the record manufacturing part, and that's when we went in the studio and made Slice.
Okay. Yeah, this video gave a pretty dang good breakdown of the history of world-class Wreckin Cru, if in fact it is 100% true. I know we've once again, talked about this channel before, and for the most part, they had things covered pretty well, but there have been a couple of things that were a little off. Right? We said there were a couple things that were a little off.
They do about a 75 to 77% accuracy.
Okay. Which is better than Straight Outta Compton movie, would you say?
Well, Straight Outta Compton, like I tell people all the time, it wasn't a documentary. It was a movie for entertainment.
There you go.
It was entertainment. So the first thing they had to do was to get a story that they can probably embellish from time to time to make it more entertaining. Simple as that.
Yeah.
So that's what they did. There has not been an accurate documentary on anything West Coast in quite some time. The people do a lot of bootleg documentaries. There's a company out of England. They did a documentary on Dr. Dre, one on Eazy, one on Snoop. They just grab some bullshit and just throw it out there. They grab a bunch of YouTube clips and bullshit interviews, and they do a half-ass job. They just recycle what people already heard. Nothing's ever new.
Yeah. And that's why people tune in right here, because you get the original West Coast hip hop history right here on N.W.A. Stories with Lonzo. On that video, Lonzo, that I was watching about DJ Clientele, it was also stated that DJ Clientele's first record, like so many others, was Sugar Hill Gang's Rapper's Delight. Apparently, he fell in love with that song. Not his first record, the first record he really fell in love with. But he fell in love with that song and fell in love with hip hop in general at that time. This question isn't about Clientele. It's more about Sugar Hill Gang. But can you take us back to that time, Lonzo? I think it was 79, 80, if I'm not mistaken, when Rapper's Delight was released. But what do you remember about hearing that song? What do you remember about how that song blew up specifically on the West Coast, 3,000 miles away from New York, basically making hip hop go mainstream? Tell us about Rapper's Delight.
Rapper's Delight was one of the baddest songs we'd ever heard, dude. It came out in '79. Reason why I know, because it came out maybe around April or February, March, April, or May. It came out mid or early '79, because it was, by the time it hit June, which is the birthday of Eve After Dark, 1979. That son bitch was huge. It was huge. It was like one of the hottest records. And here we are in a transition of music, because Knee Deep by Parliament Funkadelic and Rapper's Delight were the two hottest songs we had at the same time. I mean, they both of them are long as hell. Both of them are like 15 minutes. So, you could get a room hot as hell just playing them two records, especially if you're playing them to the end, because back then we didn't cut records off. We played them all the way to the end. Wasn't no bunch of mixing and scratching. We put it on and you let it play to the last metronome. So yeah, it was huge, Doc. And it was I think it was followed. It was preceded by Curtis Blow's Christmas Rap. I think that came out like '78. So this is when we started hearing records that started inspiring us to start looking into becoming music artists.
Tell us about Christmas Rap, Lonzo. Looking back, and no disrespect to Curtis Blow, he is one of the greats. If it were for him, a lot of us wouldn't be here. But I always found that song a little corny. But it was before my time. But apparently, it was a huge thing. Can you tell us about Christmas Rap and that song, the Curtis Blow up?
I listen to a lot of songs. I listen to people nowadays critique songs from the early days of hip hop. And everybody, that was corny. But that was the dopest shit we ever heard.
Makes sense, yeah.
There was nothing to compare it to. There was nothing to compare it to. And even now, I heard something of the day on YouTube, and the guy was rapping. He was, when Michel'le and Cool was doing them shits back in the day, man, that was shit to be admired, man. They was trying to clown their styles, and it's something. I find it interesting that songs, especially this only happens in Black music. Songs that were pioneering songs of various eras become corny as time progresses. But without these songs, you wouldn't have anything to compare it to. You wouldn't have the foundation of hip hop.